Good.
Good morning,
Wonderful.
Ammar.
How are we doing? You're listening to Ammar and
Jalf.
live on our weekly radio show right here on Spice FM.
And each week we'll try and bring some views, news, and one or two clues from the business world.
Asian Business Connections aims to connect, support, and promote the wider communities.
And we'll be talking shop quite literally and not just corner shops. Whether they look to start a business, have an existing business, or you just want to talk business, we can help.
We can help. We can help. And we do help. Gosh, 19th of April, 2024. Jeff.
Yeah, it's flying, isn't it? The year's flying.
Time's just getting faster and faster and faster. Certainly feels like it. Although you can't, I was having this comment the other day. You can't make time, can you? It's this concept of, oh, we'll have to make time to do something. It's like, you can't make time. You actually have to take something out if you want to make time.
Create.
I, I just feel as if we've got into this habit of doing everything all at once. Like, no longer do you or can you or anyone, including children, although I must admit my 5-year-old, I love it when she goes and plays with her toys by herself. And her dolls, and she's packing things, and she's always packing things. I feel as if she's going to be a traveler. Anyway, I love that fact, but more broadly and more generally, because everybody's constantly on, right? We're all like, all right, oh, I've got this to do. Oh, I'll do a bit of this, and like, I think digital has affected how we work and think to such a degree that we're constantly distracted. We're constantly distracted.
Yeah.
Anyway, we've got Mark Patton joining us this morning, so he'll be joining us around about 10:30. It's always a pleasure to have Mark on the show. Headlines. So the match last week, Jeff, I took my 5-year-old. That was a good match.
Did you? Oh, it was unbelievable, wasn't it? Did she like it?
Yeah, I think she sat through it, which I wasn't expecting.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know why I wasn't expecting. But we went, all the family went. So my wife and the 2 children, we all went together. And it was my 5-year-old's first game, and it was like she had the flags out, it was just got her involved in everything. And obviously a 4-0 or 4 whatever defeat.
Fantastic result.
It was amazing result. Amazing result.
Brilliant.
Anyway, the point of this within the headlines was the Royal National Institute for Deaf, Terry Devine, the director for inclusion at RNID, says 1 in 5 adults in the UK are deaf or have hearing loss, but people often face barriers in everyday life, including in live sports events. It's fantastic to see Sella and Newcastle United leading the way in championing this, which has the potential to have a real and lasting impact on how people who are deaf and have hearing loss experience live sports. We're excited to be part of this collaboration, and we hope this exposure opens up conversations amongst football fans about hearing loss and encourages other football clubs to raise their game and make sure deaf fans are fully included. So these were haptic vests. Jeff, did you notice them?
Yeah, I heard about it. I thought it was an unbelievable, great initiative from the club, and the way that Stella allowed the new sponsors to kind of take over their space, which imagine the value of that, and imagine the cost of not having your brand out there. But I guess it's probably even added more value to Stella's brand by giving that space up to another operator.
Oh, I mean, It's worth millions of pounds, RNID on the front of the shirt.
Yeah,
Everything else, as in,
yeah.
Casella would have paid for that as well. That's the other thing, because
Mm,
RNID is a charity, um, is the thing. But it's yeah, it's interesting. It's really interesting, um, and it's great to see Newcastle leading the way on um, on this type of A, technology, B, inclusion, and C, the fact that we're showcasing this to the world, what the opportunities are. So innovation,
mm.
is what it is.
I think it's brilliant, and that's the whole thing, Amal. I mean, I'm still a bit baffled and confused as to the Premier League stance on what they used to call financial fair play. Now that's called profit and sustainability. I don't get it, because these type of initiatives, maybe the one would not have been possible if the owners didn't have a whole load of wealth and connections and contacts that they're able to facilitate the development of these type of charities. Because who would ordinarily give up their sponsorship space for free and A, B, C, and D? So I think, for football overall, the more money that comes into the Premier League, the better it is for the Premier League. But then they have some silly rules where they're really restricting the ability to, for people to come and spend in their own league. And I think it's really negative, the impact of it. So they really need to rethink these financial rules and give people a bit more autonomy to be able to spend, because from that, there's so many benefits to the community.
Mm. Oh, it's and these type of initiatives allow that to be demonstrated wholly. And the other thing, the club's being forced to do is to do more through the foundation, as well, and the foundation is doing a lot. Um, so I think it's just a real shame that there is this challenge impacting uh, that financial fair play, fair enough, but it's incredibly unfair to those clubs like Newcastle, and that's what's wrong. It's introduce it. There should be a tiered type of response, allowing clubs to catch up with, fundamentally, the top club in the league should be the benchmark, right? So we
Mm.
should be sort of trying to allow people to spend and do whatever they can until they get to that stage. I just think it's shocking. Anyway, it is what it is. It's great to see it in Newcastle. And talking about inclusion, we had our inclusion roundtable yesterday at Womblebon Dickinson. We had a wonderful selection of key stakeholders all coming together, from across the northeast, from across sectors, and um, and we talked about faith, Jeff. We talked about religion, and one of the things that we talked about, and I'd like your view, and it's funny, right? Because even I sometimes I'm cautious as to what I say and how I say it when religion is concerned, because it almost feels like blasphemous, right? As in, you almost feel as if you're going to get struck down by lightning, because that's the belief part, right? Is this is a temporary abode, and everything we do is for the
But
afterlife, or the
my
future life, however
But
you
I
want to
think it's
describe
easier
it.
just to say that you want to be a cat. That's like, it's like the new religion, isn't it? People that say that, oh well, I'm a cat and I'm a dog, and that's my religion. It's probably a bit easier and more accepted these days.
Yeah. Anyway, crazy, crazy. And actually, I did. I've just got a note here to mention. We'll come back to this critical debate because it's really, really important. And we're going to talk about inclusive education. But I don't know if Ian Dove is listening in. Ian, I said I would put a shout out to Ian Dove from Health Call Solutions, who are transforming the health world, making patient care better, which is in the current climate is absolutely critical, and deploying digital technology to help everyone within that healthcare spectrum. So anyway, hope you have a wonderful Friday. I felt a bit like, what was he called? Alan, what the Alan Night
Ch-
Owls? Can you remember? Who?
Alan, oh, he's not doing it anymore, Mo. Alan, yeah, can't remember his name, but I remember listening to him in our schools.
You used to listen to him, what?
Well, no, during our school days, he was on around then, wasn't he?
No, yeah, Alan, he done Night Owls. He was a night
Night,
guy. He was
yeah,
on
yeah.
in a night.
That's going back 20 years,
Uh,
Mo, 20, 30 years. That's going back.
oh, yes, 40 years even, 30,
Yeah.
40 years. Yeah, anyway, um, uh, uh, he used to put shouts out and things like that. Anyway, coming back to this conversation, this show business. So we had a debate around faith, right, Jeff? And we particularly talked about um, Islam and people's views and the fact that people are struggling being themselves and having to hide their beliefs and behaviors because everyone's offended now, right? Generally, and what's going on in the Middle East and things like that. It's incredibly challenging to publicly speak your mind without someone taking offense, and that's whether you're in support of Israel or whether your support of Gaza. I'd probably say, on balance, looking at what's going on in America, it reminded me of Vietnam. It reminded me a little bit of Vietnam when the Americans went to Vietnam and sort of were doing what they were doing, and there was mass protests in America saying this is wrong, we shouldn't be doing this. And there was a sit-in yesterday at Google's offices. So staff in Google's offices, because Google has been supporting Israel, had a sit-in, and they were arrested by the police. And then at Columbia University in New York, there was a mass protest, and they called the police in. Now that's particularly dangerous as soon as you start, you know, preventing people from being the right to demonstrate and the right to have a view, is what it is. Anyway, coming back to the conversation, so we hosted this chat yesterday. One of the we provided a couple of case studies, and we talked about the benefit of consideration. And in fact, we talked about it last week with Nazmeen, because Nazmeen hosted the session, and we were talking about the benefit of faith, and how you would allow, you would encourage. It's just about respecting people, isn't it? Is what it is. That's what the fundamentals are. But there was this court case, Jack, right? Um, a court case where a head teacher had been taken to court by pupils in London.
Mhm.
And she'd been taken to court um, because by the pupils' parents wanted her to allow them to pray.
Mhm.
So Muslim pupils wanted the school to make allowances for her to pray. Now, my view was quite simply, um, we're in a in a predominantly Christian Catholic place. Um, the systems here aren't set up or geared for any particular religion other than Christianity. But even then, gone are the days where everybody would get the Sunday off, and it was in law. That changed when the retails changed, and Sunday's another day. Is what it is. People choose to. It's a weekend, but it has very limited religious connotations that were steep, and trying to accommodate, um, you know, a practice in a timetabled environment. So imagine, schools have to be methodical. They're responsible and accountable for delivering education. If you then said, a number of the students are going to miss a class 2, 3 times a day, right? But I can never ever tell what time it is, as in it's never going to be the same time. It's going to change. Imagine trying to manage that.
I think I think was that what was asked for though? I think on that regard, I would say the sensible thing is that if you want to pray, we're not going to allow you to miss your lectures to accommodate your prayers 100%. But I think if they wanted to go on their dinner break and there was another break and I wanted to do it within their own time when there's a break from class and I wanted to quickly nip and spend 10 minutes to do prayers, is a big issue doing it in that way? That would be the way. Would that not be the sensible solution? Was there's no way that we're going to accommodate our timetable. Our timetable is our timetable because obviously we're accommodating for 30 students in a classroom or whatever it may be. But if you want to do it in your own break time, then yes, there's a room there where you can go, and this is a designated area for you to go and do whatever you wish to do for that time. But don't be late for your next lecture.
And there's a balance. The challenge you have is then what if every single other religion, and it wouldn't just stop at religious belief, would it? It would be beliefs full stop. So if I'm a cat and I want to go out, what are you laughing at? If I'm a
Well,
cat,
that is the thing. I mean, where is the line? But
so
I mean,
the point is, as soon as you allow that to happen in that type of environment, I think the impact of it. And what about where if you don't have a place or a space that enables, schools are at capacities, they have very limited space, full stop. The classrooms are utilized. They're not the ideal. If anything then happened to someone whilst they were in sajda or anything like that, all of a sudden, my point being, from a practical, I'm not saying from a belief perspective, because you're absolutely right. You can make reasonable adjustments. And that was the conversation that we had yesterday, was what are reasonable adjustments? What aren't? And what can you make? And what can you afford to make? And then what happens? What are the risks involved in making a reasonable adjustment versus what are the benefits? So a number of, I remember Marie Curie, after my late father passed, they created a multi-faith and reflection room, in the Marie Curie. No problem. So I'm just going to keep talking because Jeff's got to go and make sure he's probably getting some breakfast or something. He is. Anyway, it was a wonderful debate that we had, and the conversation led to everyone recognizing the importance of taking a person-centered view and for it to be a balanced view. And one of the things that I kept on talking about, and one of the things that I keep talking about, Jaff, is the need to make sure that you engage everyone that any decision impacts. So if you're going to, and obviously a lot of the conversation that we had yesterday in this round table was slightly sensitive and confidential. Now, one of the individuals talked about their organization, coming to him and saying, or her, or them, or they, coming to them and saying, oh, we need to have a list of all of the days that we should be celebrating. And then they provided a list and they said, actually, give us the top four. And his response was, well, actually, if you're going to do it for some, you need to do it for all, right? Otherwise, it's unfair, isn't it?
Mm.
Is that not unfair? If you sort of said, I'll tell you what we're going to do is we're going to try and be more inclusive, but the only people that we're going to be inclusive for are these groups. Not every group, not every individual, but by virtue of doing that, you're being exclusionary,
Well,
aren't you?
but Amar, I think that's why I think are these, for example, NUFC, they have a multi-faith room, right? But
Yeah,
then, I mean, what is a religion these days? Because honestly, when people are allowed to be, I
and
mean, there's some groups that say that, well, and I've seen it on, I don't know if it's made up or not, but they believe that they genuinely that they believe that they're a cat, and they believe
yeah.
that. So to them, I mean, how far? But then I think you just need to be sensible, right? So I think if you have a multi-faith room, if that's what is demanded by X amount of groups of people, so yeah, there can't be any preferential treatment for one group above the other, because that's when things get messy. So it's finding a happy equilibrium across the board. And how do you do that? Well, hey, you have to, like you said, you have these discussions amongst that group of people, and you make sensible and fair decisions that don't have any double standards. In that way, you're able to make fair decisions that should keep most groups happy.
Yeah, and I think it's about anyway, it's all about reasonableness is
It
what
is.
I and
I
the
think for me,
definition of that. Because it's
I think,
interesting because here's the thing, Jaff, right? Now let's just say that was allowed or enabled or encouraged um in an environment. Look, actually it went through court, right? Let's just say the decision had gone the other way and that the court and the judge had ruled yes, anybody who wants to pray should be allowed to pray, as long as whatever it is and things like that. Now, I don't think anybody has the right to tell anybody else what they should believe, right? No one necessarily has the right. You can communicate, right? You can share your views and things like that, but I can't tell you now need to be follow Hinduism. Whilst you might love to do that, there's no doubt about that. But I can't tell you to do that. It's wrong for me to do that. I can tell you the virtues of my beliefs and the benefits of that and whatever it is. Then fair enough, and you make your own educational decision. However, equally, you can't impose your practices on me in my environment and where I'm I'm commissioned to do something. So my point around this is the impact on. Imagine if everyone was forced to have a multi-faith room. Now some businesses could afford to do that, other businesses couldn't. Some businesses would simply go pop, wouldn't they? As in, if
well,
you
I
were, if
don't, I don't even have a spare in our space. We don't even have a spare meter by meter or 2 meter by meter room to give. Genuinely,
but imagine if that was the law, what would happen?
yeah, it's adding a lot of um, it's adding a lot more issues in terms of space and the premium and cost of spaces in A, B, C, and D. And I think it's not going to be an easy thing to implement.
Anyway, so it is about reasonable and proportionate approach. Here's our wonderful guest, Mr. Mark Patton, joining us uh, from Newcastle City Council, and more broadly, a wonderful advocate, ambassador, an educator, uh, an inspiration, and he's on the Isle of wherever he is, Isle of UK. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Morning, Jeff.
Good morning, Mark. How you doing?
I'm very well, thank you.
Good.
And what you can see behind me is the wonderful St Edward's Bay in Tynemouth.
Oh, beautiful.
Wonderful. That's a good angle. That's
It
a great
is.
angle. Yeah.
Yeah, it's good.
So it is the Isle of the Northeast, is what it is.
One of the most beautiful isles in the country. And a
Undoubtedly.
secret. We must keep it to ourselves.
Don't tell everyone. You don't want them to
That's
come back
funny.
and spoil what's yours.
So it is funny though, the amount of people that I come across, and particularly as we're on this mission to make the Northeast the most inclusive place in the UK, the amount of people who are here who have migrated here because of education. So they studied at one of the universities and they've made this place their home, or they were they were positioned here or got a job here or whatever that was. And they've gone, this is amazing. This is a great place and a great space. And it is.
It is. It's, I think it's one of the little gems in this wonderful country of ours that often gets overlooked by everybody but the people who are here. And I think sometimes even ourselves do take it a little bit for granted because it's kind of, we see it every day, we travel around it every day, we work in it, play in it every day, and we forget just how different other places in this country and indeed further afield in other countries actually are, and how lucky we are, to have this on our doorstep and to have the opportunities that are here. If you're willing to search for them and work hard, there is great opportunity in the Northeast, absolutely fantastic opportunity. And that's one of the stories this term that we're trying to reinforce with our children and young people in all of our schools at every age. You are living in a fantastic place to grow up, and we need to do better at sharing those opportunities with some of our young people who, for one reason or another, sometimes just don't see them or don't appreciate them.
Yeah,
that's part of our job, isn't it?
Here, well, I think so, Mark. I remember, Mark, when I went to university in Leicester. And then you think that, oh yes, I'm like leaving and I'm gonna go to a city of, bright lights, big city and all the rest of it. You have a perception. And I got to Leicester and I'm thinking, what on earth is this city all about? Because my own city is like a million times better. The shopping centre was small. I got a bit of a fright because there were so many Asians there when I got there. I'm thinking, Jesus, have I come back to Bangladesh or something, But I thought that then you realize how amazing Newcastle is. After you see all the other cities in the country and what they have and what they don't have, but we have got a phenomenal city from the nucleus of the city centre and the way that naturally just stretches out to the river. And then obviously all the areas around, the beaches, Whitley Bay, Tynemouth and all the rest of it. You got Durham, which is not that far away, and obviously Northumberland and all that's there.
Jalf, I absolutely agree. I was born and bred here. I went away for 4 years to university, but like yourself, to a different part of the country, and always wanted to come back here. I always wanted to teach here. That was where I started my career in education, is in teaching. I always wanted to come back and teach in the Northeast because it had given me the options to go away to university, given me the options to get a degree, given me the options to pursue a career that I was really, really interested in from a very young age. And that on top of being part of a family who took me to the coast every weekend and every school holiday, who took me across to the Lake District and up into Scotland and down into Wales, all of which are relatively within easy reach. I think we often forget that our transport infrastructure in the Northeast is actually quite good. And a lot of investment has gone in nationally and regionally around that to make that better for the residents here, but also crucially for our businesses. You've got Port of Tyne, Port of Blythe, Teesside, all those ports on the coast bringing huge opportunities and investment into the region, and huge opportunities for our families to work in those sectors and the ones that support them. I think again, sometimes we forget the allied bits that have to go around an industry to make it work. Big companies like Nissan are really good when they talk to young people and families about opportunities within their organization, because they talk about, yes, the engineers and the people who do all of the complicated technical stuff, through to the workers in the factory who assemble things and quality assure and put them together, but also all the way through to those service industries within the organization that help the employees and the processes to work, from staff who work in in offices, to the cooks who work in the canteen, to the first aid and medical staff who are on sites. Huge opportunities, huge opportunities, at all sorts of levels of experience and qualification. Whether somebody's got no qualifications at all, there's always an entry point somewhere. Sometimes it's a bit hard to find, and part of our job in education, and your job if you're representing businesses, to try and make those a bit clearer and a bit more transparent. But I think we're getting better at that as well.
I think so, and I think Jeff's earlier point around communities, different types of communities, I think we all recognize and appreciate the value of diversity. And that's not just about color or gender, it's about social mobility, it's about those lived experiences, it's about Jeff going away and coming back, and that reinforcement of this is still the best place in the world. It's all of those things. Mark, it's really interesting that you're focusing and mentioning children and young people, looking to try and help them understand that this is a great place and space. I think in parallel to that, there's a bit to do with adults as well, because all of us tend to get hung up and hung over the lack of what we don't have, as opposed to what we do. I mean, gosh, I remember thinking about my younger brother. I'd say yes to him 9 times out of 10, but the only thing that he ever remembered was the one time that I said no to him. It's funny, but that's just a natural thing to consider. Anyway, we jump straight in. Mark, can you kindly introduce yourself, who you are, what you do, why you do it, please? I know this might sound repetitive for you, but certainly for our listeners and our viewers, I think it's important.
Yeah, no problem. I'm Mark Patton. I'm the Assistant Director for Education and Skills within Newcastle City Council. And what that means is I have responsibilities for the education that happens in the city up until the end of statutory education, but also some responsibilities in terms of the bits that happen after that. So in the 16 to 19 or 16 to 25 age ranges, and a little bit in terms of adult education, which Ammar, you touched on earlier. Why do I do it? I think the first few minutes there is a really good illustration of why I do, because I am just so passionate about making sure that children and young people get the best opportunities they can when it comes to making the next choice, whatever that is and whatever age they are, that they make that choice. Understanding the options around your next steps are really important, and part of what schools and education and employers and trainers can do is just help young people and their families to understand, actually, this is the range of options that you have. And if you want to follow this path or this path, these are the things you might want to think about, gathering into your toolbox, so that when it comes to having to make that decision, you're in a good place. It's a bit like, employers do with their staff. What do you want to do next? Where do you see yourself in a year's time or 2 years' time or 3 years' time? And how can I help you to get there? What do you need from me? But for children and young people, it's what do they need from us?
Which is, I mean, an incredibly challenging job, but arguably one of the most inspiring and influential jobs. And you've heard me say this both publicly and privately, and on here as well. Mark, you do a tremendous job, and we're ever so grateful for the job that you do in such trying times. But let's look at the positive and the value and the opportunities. So absolutely right, focusing on how do we inspire young people rather than simply put them through a process. How do we encourage them that they can all be astronauts? They can all be, it was World Space Day a couple of days back. And interestingly, and just very, very briefly, Mark, we hosted a round table yesterday on inclusion, and we've got a series of these, and actually one of the ones that I would really like to do is education, or what's inclusive education and what's reasonable and not. And we concentrated on faith, and sort of religion and faith, and it was religion rather than just purely faith or beliefs. Um, and actually, Sajda, your head of policy, came along, and she was great. It's wonderful to see what's going on within Newcastle and at the heart of it, but not just as a from a policy perspective, from a practice perspective. Anyway, the point that I was wasn't about Sajda. It was around one of the other attendees, and she was, you know, I've educated myself through my children because they come home and they talk about Diwali and they talk about um, Jewish festivals, Islamic festivals, various different festivals. And she was like, I've never known anything about these type of things. So I'm learning from my children. So actually, within schools, that recognition that we need to celebrate individual identity. And it's happening in schools, which, you know, on one hand, can be the most challenging places and spaces for some, um, but equally the most inclusive spaces and places, because certainly young children don't see colour as something different. They see what pen have you got, or what, you know, it's more those things that you touch and feel rather than physical attributes that they question. And why does that change, Mark?
Uh, it's a really good question. You're absolutely right. You know,
I was about to say, what a good question.
there's stacks of research which shows that, you know, if you speak to very young children, what do we mean by that? Kind of primary age, you know, to kind of 10, 11 and unders, they, because of where they are in their development and experience journey as human beings, they learn empirically. Largely, they learn from what they see about them, what they do day to day, and what people expose them to. And they're kind of a, you know, it's not a great expression or a great analogy, but it's figurative. Like they are kind of a blank page, an empty book. And every day and every week and every month and every year starts to fill up that book, their life journey, their life diary. And at the beginning, they just take things at face value. You know, I'm just talking to another human being, another person. They don't see, you know, the importance or otherwise of what culture you are, what your address is, what shoes you've got on your feet, what color your skin is, what language you speak at home. They don't see the importance or the difference, as I said, of that. And they're just honest. You know, they're just really open.
Beautiful. It's beautiful to see, to
It
experience.
is amazing. It is amazing when you see some of the research that's published, and a lot of it nowadays is published on video, so you can actually see the young people interacting with the interviewer or with each other. Yeah. And when some of the interviewers ask questions like, you know, what are the differences between boys and girls, for example, you mentioned gender, they struggle. They really struggle to articulate what the difference is, because actually, barring some of the physical and biological stuff, there isn't any difference
Yeah,
as
there
far as they're concerned. And even as far as adults are concerned, largely we're the same. We're human beings. We're all capable of doing the same kinds of things broadly. And for children, that's the same of what, you know, what's the difference between you who've got a pale skin and your friend who's sitting next to you who's got a slightly darker skin? There isn't any. There isn't any. You go to church, you know, a Christian church with a cross on it, you know, however often, and the person sitting next to you goes to a church which's got a, you know, a crescent moon on the top. What's it? None. Absolutely none. No difference at all. And what about the third person who actually doesn't go to church at all?
Yeah.
Doesn't matter.
Gentlemen, I'm going to let you continue with that interesting debate, but Ammar, I need to get off because I've got to get to a meeting today. So
It's
I'll let you.
outrageous, Jalf.
I'll let you
You're
get on.
all good.
Enjoy your meeting.
We'll definitely catch up. So, Mark, really good to see you. I'm really good to see you too. I'll catch up
Well,
with
we
you.
keep threatening to bring Mark
Bring
down,
Mark
don't we?
along. Mark, you've got to come along. Let's sit and have lunch one day. Let's make it happen. Yeah, excellent. All right, take care.
Bye bye. Take care.
Bye bye.
So,
No,
young children, as I've said, that empty book, filling it up with life experience and as they go, and it's at some point, based on that experience, largely, they form views about the world. Psychologists call them structures and frameworks, and they gain views and opinions directly from experience. So if children repeatedly see or hear or feel other people behaving in a different way because of a characteristic or a thing that somebody has, they will learn that. And sometimes it'll become part of them. It becomes part of the book.
Yeah.
And that's, in my simplistic view, that's why things change. And it's why we've got to be so careful and treat so preciously the formative years of our young adults, because our young adults are the citizens of the future. They're the people who are going to be, the people doing the work in our factories and offices and out in the great outdoors and what have you. But they're also going to be the people who will raise children of their own.
Yeah.
And one of the most powerful influences on children are the people they see every day. That's why teachers are important, but it's also why parents and carers and extended family are important, because they are so influential. And we have got to be so careful. And I use the word guarded advisedly about what we say and what we do, because children are listening all the time. Sometimes directly you can see that they're listening and part of a conversation, but also the child who's in the living room or the kitchen just playing quietly in the corner is picking up on everything that's happening on that conversation on the coffee table. The tone of voice, how people are speaking about other people, what's going on in the conversation, the words that are being used. Parents will often come to school and say, why is my child using this word? I don't want them to use this word. It's not a nice word to use. And teachers will say, we don't use it in school. They're hearing it elsewhere. It might be in the playground from other children. It could be in other houses when they go to visit their friends and family. It's a fascinating topic. How do we turn into the adults that we become? And a lot of it is the people around us as children are so influential on what we turn out like.
And I think you're absolutely right. I'm incredibly fortunate to have a 5-year-old, Mark, and I use and reference my 5-year-old in my day-to-day work all of the time, because a lot of my work involves a cultural, organizational, transformational change. But it's immensely interesting, and what we can learn from children and young people as well by observing and engaging with them, and how we adopt and adapt some of that. So that inspirational part that you're referring to, I've tried as much as, interestingly, I've always followed older people, nigh on a generation above me, but sometimes not quite, but at least sort of 10 years is what I've associated myself with and through. And because of that, I've learned quite a bit. And at times I've felt as if I'm a lot older than I really am. Now I'm a lot older than I probably really want to be, as opposed to but that doesn't stop that consideration. But I continue to be inspired. So my point around this, yes, we change as individuals, but we can continue to develop. We can continue to a profound thought that I had last year was when I hit a landmark age, I was like, I still don't know what I want to be. And I don't mean that from a professional perspective. I'm not sat here, questioning all of my education and the fact that I've got an MBA and I'm a fellow of the Institute of Leadership and I'm all of these things and I know what I'm good at and I know the things that I'm not so good at. I'm just talking about generally in life. I still don't know what I want to be, so I'll keep trying and testing. And the most challenging question anybody can ask me is, what do you do? Because my response to that is everything that I can. And I do. I just literally any opportunity I get, if I can do it, I'll give it a go. Be it I'm spinning more plates and doing whatever it is, because I love experience. I love learning, and I think that's one of the things that we sadly get to a point where we stop at times.
I, I agree. I think going back to my book analogy, I think we should always be looking to write the next page, with something new, something that's not been in the book before. And that's kind of what you're describing. Going back to what I said about children and what you were saying there in terms of you actively going out and seeking the next pages. One of the luxuries we do have as adults is to do that. We gain more control and more independence as we grow older, and we're able to hunt out and seek those. I know I'm laboring the point here, but going back to children, they don't have a choice often about what goes into that book, what's written on the pages. And that's, to labor the point finally once more, and then I promise I won't mention it again. The people who are around children are so influential because they are there every day. Children, can't move away, don't have the choice to say, actually, I don't want to listen to that, and I'm off somewhere else. I'm going to disassociate myself from you as a person because I don't like what you're saying or what you're doing. Children often don't have that choice. So yeah, worth remembering as for us as adults when we're around children. They're listening all the
So
time.
those listening in, Mark, and I think one of the things I always value is your insights and your support and advice and guidance and things like that. And on that very note and basis, um, getting people who are listening and watching us to think about this, what type of top tips would you suggest then? Because I imagine lots of people are unaware of this, right?
I think certainly a lot of new parents who parenting is hard, isn't it? Raising a new human being is really, really tricky, especially if it's the first time you've done it. And I think new parents often forget how strongly influential they are in everything that they do. We've mentioned this before in numerous of these sessions. They can help or they can unintentionally hinder children's development just by doing or not doing things in a helpful or an unhelpful way. So I think in terms to answer your question, how can the people who are listening and watching support the growth and development of a child's book and putting useful things into these pages? Remember, if a child is within sight or within earshot of you, they are listening. They are absolutely listening. So think about the actions that you do. Think about the words that you use when you're talking about something. Even if you're really angry and frustrated about something and talking to somebody about that, if your child is by your side or is within earshot, they are listening and learning about how to handle situations like that. They are learning if you are repeatedly angry and shout at people and bang on the desk and abuse them, they are learning that's how you deal with your frustration. You shout at somebody. However, if you are calm and reasoned and use appropriate words and treat people with respect, even when you are disagreeing with what they're saying to you, children will learn, okay, so this is how we deal with it.
And it is that positive influence, isn't it? It's that, yeah.
I mean,
Thank you for that.
I mean, the word that's used in child development is modeling. You know, the people around children are modeling things all the time, modeling language, modeling behaviors, modeling how to dress, what to wear, how to speak to people, how to greet somebody, you know, that you know, or how to greet somebody that you don't know. Children learn that and then learn it from the people around them.
I'm just making some notes. Mark, is what I was doing. So I think you're right to say maybe new parents, but I must admit, Mark, even as old parents, and me in particular, older, now that I'm feeling it, it's a reminder is always useful because I'm not suggesting people are unaware of this or their actions, but sometimes it's just about that reflection.
Yeah.
You know, someone, you just need a prompt. Anyway, I want to finish off because we've got about 2-3 minutes left.
No
I want to
problem.
come back to the positive elements, Mark, of what's going on. So give me some highlights as to what's going on educationally and more broadly
Okay.
within Newcastle.
So obviously we're back after an Easter break. This is the summer term. You know, for many of our children, young people and families, this term is one of change and transition. So, you know, we've had now both national offer days for children moving from primary into secondary schools and from children who are going to start school in September in reception. So that's been a really exciting 2 or 3 weeks for those children families to finding out where they're going to be going in the world of education. And also, consequently, the schools themselves finding out who their new children are going to be coming to them. So there's lots of opportunities this term for people to explore and think about next steps and change and transition. And let's not forget, for many children, that's scary and frightening, and they need support and they need people to hold them emotionally, as well as, you know, feeling safe. But also this term for some of our older young people and children is a term of testing. Whatever you think about testing, it happens. We've got SATs coming up this term. We've got GCSEs, universities will be holding their examinations for those students. Coursework will be due. Employers will be going through their endpoint assessments for apprenticeships, and it's a really, really busy term. The summer term is always exciting because it's all about next steps. It's about change in education, but it's also about, you know, reflecting on the world around us. You know, the sun's visible more times. It's warmer. It's nicer. We can enjoy the outdoors more and gain more from that. So, yeah, a very, very positive term ahead.
Good. And very, very briefly, you know, what I think all of these changes are incredibly positive. And one of the things that you're doing more of is this inspirational recruiting people to come in and inspire schools and young people. So there's going to be a little bit of a campaign that we'll champion through this platform as well, to just get more people to realise. Bear with me 1 second.
Israel has launched a missile strike against Iran. 2 US officials confirmed the attack to CBS News. Israel